brought in a few rather than the many. It has failed to be more inclusive, and therefore I would urge it must be removed, replaced with a redress plan that creates an inclusive growth and actually ensures that there's real broad-based participation for citizens in this country. And therefore, Democrats, I want to table here today that we must create a jobs and justice fund. We must have a fund in our country that citizens can contribute to that can ensure that it redresses and reverses the apartheid most damaging legacies, the destruction of wealth transfer. And no one knows the best way to achieve this is to give people more title, more access to shareholding so that they can transfer wealth to the next generation. And therefore we celebrate the victory today in court in the Mr. Rakase case that shows that the DA does not mean we need to amend the constitution, we need to give title to citizens. Honorable members, we know very clearly that many young people are unemployed, but it's not just because they are unemployed, they are unemployable, because the education that we give them, particularly in rural communities, is poor. It's time that we set up a national civilian service where young people can intern for a year, learn skills. The state needs to be able to pay them so that they can contribute to our economy. Furthermore, South Africans, when it comes to declaring South Africa open for business, the first thing we must do is relax the labor legislation to create an environment in which business can create jobs. We must pass the DA's jobs bill, which contains a wide variety of incentives for foreign companies and domestic companies to invest in South Africa. We need to look at a tax incentive for our big job-creating sectors like manufacturing, tourism, mining, and financial services. And then I would urge, especially in small businesses, we must pay them on time so that we don't hamper our small businesses through red tape. But fellow members, many of these stems can be implemented right away. It's a crisis. It needs leadership from all of us. The difficulty is that it's impossible for this side of the house to give leadership because they can't agree on anything. There's a Treasury document that has been supported, we support, but they can't even agree on it. It's by no means a comprehensive strategy for growth, but it's got practical ways that we can kickstart our economy, and we need to start doing it now and rolling back unemployment. We support the document, but we need to put it into action. Honorable members, a plan simply is not good enough. We've been through this history. It was NDP, it was GEAR, and then it was the new growth path. This government has not been short on ideas. What it's been short on is action. We must act. We must have the courage to make tough choices, and we know what those choices are. You can't, Democrats, say to people, you are going to increase salaries by 11% a year, but you are also going to cut public sector wage spending. That's confusion. You can't speak of tightening the belt while you keep SAA in the skies. You can't keep overhauling education, but equally so you want to look after SATU because they must vote for the president at the next Congress. You can't keep about cleaning government, but you fail to arrest the people who in fact have stolen the people's money and put them in jail. Instead, you promote them to become diplomats. You can't build a capable state if you are not willing to abandon cadre deployment that has been practiced by this House. So I'm asking, regardless of what policy your side puts on the table, you can't agree, but the policies we put on our side, we are already implementing in government, our governments are delivering, and we are bringing the change that we need. So fellow South Africans, no one can debate that we are in a crisis. We need to lead. We need to work together. And I'm here to call upon this House to say, let's do at least 3 things. Let's reform our politics. You don't have to come here and vote, and if there's an idea that comes from this side, you reject it. We must work together to reform our politics. We must furthermore reform our economy. Our economy needs to be more inclusive, and it needs to bring on more people. But lastly, this is the pain I feel. What apartheid said to citizens in this country is that families could not stay together. It split families. We will discuss mining in a moment. But let's reform our societies. Let's restore the credibility of the home so that we don't have to sit outside in a society that's filled with gender-based violence, where our citizens can be protected. I want to ask President Ramaphosa to be here on Tuesday when we discuss the scourge of gender-based violence. He must come and respond. He must come and address citizens. And therefore, more than anything, when we come up with an economic plan, we must agree together, we must work together, and we must have the courage to make tough decisions. I call on all of you here today to say time for talk is over. Enough is enough. We must act now, and we must put citizens first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Order.
Enough is enough.
Honorable members.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Can we please continue? Honorable Nkabani, please take the debate forward.
House Chairperson, it is worth noting that the unemployment predicament is not a new phenomenon in South Africa. However, it is one of the most concerning predicaments that the country is facing. I believe that we agree with Honorable Maimane on this one. It should be noted that employment happens if there is a growing economy in the country. Employment has been stagnant or failing since the year 1980. These have been attributed by a number of factors related to apartheid government policies which aimed at promoting separate development. During the same period, the majority of South Africans were deprived the right of association and affiliation. The ANC-led government has made tremendous strides over the past 25 years to meet the basic needs of all segments of our communities, to reduce poverty and to transform the economy that was characterized by serving the interests of the minority. In the SONA, the Honorable President acknowledged that youth unemployment is a challenge and it requires creativity, innovation, and sustainable solutions. We had a successful investment conference last year as part of government's broad and targeted strategy to stimulate economic growth and to create jobs. We hope we hope the success of the African economy lies in the hands of the ANC-led government. And one can say without any doubt that the future of South African economy is very bright. However, growth remains slower than anticipated following overall focus for 2019 from 3.3% to 3.2%, but it is expected to improve by 3.5% in the year 2020. We believe it is very imperative for us to remind the honorable members that during the State of the Nation address, the President in his speech did mention that, meaning we must stop scanning and skimming. We must read the documentation. I open quote, he said, the area of focus for the sixth administration, amongst other things, will be economic transformation and job creation, whereby economy will grow at a faster rate and 2 million young people will be employed, thereby creating employment and economic transformation. If all of us as members, listen, otherwise we are going to miss this point. If all of us as members, we could critically analyze and define unemployment concept and paradox in a South African perspective, not European perspective, one would learn that basically unemployment doesn't appear to be a result of lack of initiatives or programs or stakeholders' involvement. The unemployment has been hypothesized, but rather is a result of haphazard implementation of interventions, of which we do have programs, we do have interventions as the ANC-led government. However, in order to intervene effectively in trying to address the identified gaps, the ANC-led government expanded the mandate of the department to be employment and labor, which amongst other responsibility is an enabler and a driver to facilitate employment opportunities. Honorable Speaker, the recent labor force survey revealed that unemployment in South Africa increased by 1.4 to 29% in the second quarter of 2019, compared to the previous quarter where the unemployment rate was sitting at 27.6%. According to the Labour Force Survey, the expanded definition of unemployment, including those segments in our communities that have stopped looking for job opportunities, went up to 38.5% in the second quarter of 2019 from 38% in the first quarter. Let's analyze the report now. Based on the report, it is clear that there is an increase of job seekers and those that were not economically active, including those segments within our communities that were discouraged to seek for job opportunity, meaning that the employment has been increasing, but the absorption rate is not meeting the demand of the number of job seekers currently. There has been an increase of few entrants to job market since the year 2015, which means that there is hope to all those under the ANC-led government. There is hope that all those that were demoralized to seek job opportunities are now entering the space. Let me tell you the key sectors that have contributed to this. The key sectors that have contributed to the increase in employment is informal sector, recording the largest employment gains, followed by agriculture and trade. The contributing factors are Competition Amendment Acts, the funds to boost SMMEs and supported employment enterprises, and the ease of doing business in South Africa. The ANC-led government vision for South African economy is guided by the Freedom Charter's clarion call that the people shall share in the country's wealth. We are committed to build a more equal society in which all can find decent jobs and enjoy sustainable livelihoods. We are also noting that the capacity of the state is a macroeconomic issue since it influences behavior of the economy as a whole. We reaffirm our resolutions as the African National Congress to strengthen the developmental state in order to ensure seamless implementation for radical socio-economic transformation. As the ANC-led government, we have very good policies, Comrade Maimane, which serve as our own economic and socio-economic development strategy for the country. It should be noted that SOEs and DFI are the models. Honorable Maimane, SOEs and DFI are the modes that we use to advance the developmental state. On SOEs and DFI, as the ANC, we are not going to allow neoliberal ideology of the DA to privatize SOEs. It is well known that, it is well known that the DA have adopted this model from East Europe. The East Europe embarked on transferring enterprise from state ownership to private ownership. Other countries like Hungary have sold SOEs to foreign investors as major mode of privatization. As the ANC-led government, we are advocating for state involvement in the economy, which is underpinned by ensuring the beneficial to abangathathi intweni phaa ezilalini, impula zikaLujata, not the minority. We are not going to allow the minority to do as they choose. As the African National Congress, we are on the right track. The people of South Africa have trust in the ANC-led government. We ought to implement the policies of the ANC, and we shall not dare fail our people.
Chairperson.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Nkabani,
The commission...
just take your seat for a while. Yes, Honorable Vessels, why are you rising?
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to check if the honourable member is prepared to take a question.
Honorable member, are you prepared to take a question?
I'll take the question outside. Let's meet outside after this session.
Thank you. Continue.
Honorable House Chair, the Commission for Employment Equity's 19th annual report reveals that white people continue to be dominant group in the top management positions, sitting at more than 60%, whereby Africans are sitting at 15.1%. The analysis says Males are 76.5% and females at 23.5%. The report further reveals that Black professionals in general and Africans in particular are not considered for top or senior positions in the private sector compared to employment at national, provincial, and local government. The report indicates the gross failure of the private sector to meet the equity targets. The report shows that the country is not moving on transformation. This then requires stringent measures that should be employed by the department to enforce Employment Equity Act, in particular in the private sector. There should be more inspections and enforcement programs, as well as collaborative efforts with the public and private sector and organized labor in order to mitigate this predicament. Honorable members should note that unemployment did not start in Q2. We really can't measure the performance of the sector based on one quarterly report. With all these efforts in place, the ANC-led government will address all the needs of our people, of which one is unemployment. We will continue to fight the scourge of unemployment until
Thank
we
you,
overcome
Honorable
this
Member. Your
predicament.
time has
Thank you.
expired. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you very much. Honorable Shibambo, it's your time. Thank you, honorable
No,
members.
thank you very much, House Chair. So the leader of the official opposition introduced the topic here about the unemployment crisis. And he did not say anything clearly and cogent about unemployment, what it is, and what solutions must be provided. He just said enough is enough, but he didn't say what exactly must happen here. So you could see the choreography. But also the
Order.
speaker from the ANC says that the ANC will not accept the neoliberal policies of the DA, but the ANC is the most neoliberal political organization in the entire Southern Hemisphere. In terms of how you deal with your policies, it's a fact. Now, we all know that we have got more than 10 million South Africans who are looking for jobs and they cannot find them. But let us give you the national character of such unemployment. Black Africans constitute, like by themselves, we have got 43% unemployment. The population of Indian descent have got 11% unemployment, meaning that out of 10 Indian people, only one is unemployed. And in terms of the white population, the unemployment is 7.4%. And the likelihood is that out of the unemployed white person, they might be coming from a household where someone has got a job. So the crisis of unemployment in South Africa is particularly Africanized. It is affecting the African majority. And this is a result of the fact that whilst we have abolished statutory apartheid, we still have socio-economic apartheid in South Africa. And it is defined exactly in the same way Verwoerd had envisioned. That is what we are dealing with. Now, what is to be done? Let us maybe still first deal quickly with the issues that must not be done. One is that we must not adopt the new liberal pamphlet which was produced by Minister Tito Mboweni last week. It's pure nonsense. It's going to worsen the job crisis. It is not going to even improve economic growth. But two, we must reject the notion that our fellow African brothers and sisters are a cause of the structural unemployment. What is structural unemployment? Is the fact that our economy's architecture is designed in such a way that it is not labor absorptive. So the jobs are created in the services sector, in government and domestic services. But in the critical component, which is the secondary sector, which is supposed to be manufacturing, the production of goods and services, we are found wanting there. Why? Because we have got a poorly conceptualized industrial policy. The essence of South Africa's industrial policy is to say, let us go and get these foreign companies to come and be subsidized heavily here in South Africa. We're not building domestic industries. We've got a wrong, decidedly wrong trade policy. It is almost tariff-free to import almost all the daily consumables that we use every day, the daily things that we use every day, including electronics, household electronics, furniture, plastic products, everything else there. If we were producing all of those things ourselves, we're going to provide for jobs. Now, the state has to utilize first its procurement power to drive local industrialization. From as sophisticated things as trucks, trains, cars, the state must build domestic capacity to produce those and first consume them before we throw them into the market for daily users. That is how we should drive industrialization and make sure that everything else that we utilize is domestically produced. The ANC manifesto says that 80% of the goods that the state procures must be produced domestically, but none of you has ever come with a legislative framework that seeks to deal with that question. So you can't deal with unemployment without industrialization. There's no shortcut towards proper development and job creation without industrialization. But also you must create multiple special economic zones. In the process of dealing with the jobs crisis, you must establish special economic zones that are driven by inward industrialization domestically in all parts of South Africa, so that you begin to depopulate Gauteng, the Western Cape, and parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Because the manner in which things are now, more than 90% of money exchanges and movements happens only in 3 areas in South Africa. That is not sustainable. So we need a different architecture of the economy. One thing that you cannot avoid is the fact that we must industrialize. And at the center of industrialization is the return of the land to the ownership of the people as a whole. So when we speak about the land question, it's not only just about agriculture, it's about industrialization as well. Because we must control and own the entire value chain of food production, from the tractors to farming to processing to packaging to exports. We must be in charge of the entire value chain. So we need the land so that we can sustainably create jobs for the people of South Africa. As things stand, there's confusion this side and there's further confusion this side in terms of what happens. That is why we must always give direction as the EFF. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I call on the Honorable
How do you direct whilst you are lost?
Numalo. Thank you very much, honorable members. Thank you. You may be seated. Let's continue. Thank you, honorable members. Order. Order. Thank you. Before I call on the Honorable Numalo, I just want to welcome all the guests in the gallery and a special welcome to our young girls up there from the Bloemhof Girls High. You are welcome, young girls. This is your parliament. You learn a lot from here. Thank you. We now continue. Honorable Numalo, take the podium.
Honorable House Chair, members of the National Assembly, we're in a crisis. Actually, a time-ticking bomb. Today we are faced with the difficult task of finding an urgent solution to a problem that should not exist in South Africa today. We're in an economy that oscillates on the curbs of recession. The instability and lack of confidence in our economy is the leading factor as to the current overall unemployment rate of 49%. This represents a rise of 1.4% from the previous quarter. When we delve into the details of these figures, we see that youth are the most affected. Now, it is ridiculous to say that we cannot refer to the previous quarter that was published. Really, what do we therefore refer on? The statistics certainly do not paint a good picture for anyone seeking qualitative explanation of the South African labor market and economy. Then maybe a qualitative explanation offers a better and a brighter perspective to things. Unfortunately, the answer to that is a no as well. This is due to a number of reasons, such as the alignment of skills development versus the National Development Plan and the African Union Agenda 2063, destruction of income-generating activities, business and civilian safety risks within South Africa. We look to education for our youth in the future and their futures. However, it must be education that capacitates them and provides them with the greatest advantage in the employment market. Skills learned must be applicable to meet the market demands, as the mismatch in this arena will not lead to a greater levels of unemployment. Even the graduates cannot find themselves employment. They may not find something related to their field of study, yet have no other option but to settle for a job elsewhere else outside their sector of expertise. It is not to discount the fact that in exceptional cases, some graduates may excel in other areas that were not primarily skilled or educated in. But for most graduates, this is not the case. In the context of youth investment, some parents actually and communities have sacrificed large amounts of daily living wages in order to assist the youth to achieve a skill, thereby placing a significant amount of pressure on the youth to ensure they are able to assist their communities in return through a means of employment. In other words, their contribution in the labor market is vital and must enable them to find work in the field that they were trained in. With the current labor market being so constrained, this is sadly just a pipe dream. We see a high number of graduates and educated young people being promoted from university and other learning institutions with often no place to constructively use their skills. Thus, it is expected that the youth relentlessly and with great cost incurred apply for employment opportunities. After a while, anyone will lose motivation and drive to find employment. The lack of employment mixed in a slow economy condemns many youth to a life of poverty and no other option than to revert to social ills. House Chair, today we experience a crisis of sickened society suffering from the clouds of a triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. No matter how hard one argues against this, it is these three challenges that are interrelated and pose a great threat to our society. We seek to build an educated youth in SA and yet destroy these efforts through a danger experience on our streets. What future then does our youth have to look upon? Violence is an all-consuming negative in our nation at present. The violent attacks against foreign national persons and their property will not work to our detriment. Our youth will inherit a state that will no longer be friends to other nations, causing both informal and formal sanctions of South Africa. This means that the trade relations within Africa will be severely cut and employment opportunities within South African companies abroad will be reduced.
Thank you,
Quite
Honorable
simply, South Africa looks ungovernable under the leadership
your
of the
time
ANC.
has expired
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you very much. Agbare lid, Groenewald.
Agbare voorsitter, ek wil begin om die leerlinge van Bloemhof baie hartlik welkom te heet hier in die parlement. Hier waar julle toekoms bepaal word, dat julle kan sien wat hier aangang. Ek self is 'n Noordwester, ek bly in Stilfontein en daarom hartlik welkom. Honorable Chair, the question we should ask ourselves, who is responsible to ensure that we create jobs in South Africa? The responsibility is that of the government of the day. But what is the problem? There are only about 2 ministers from government here. So it is quite clear the government of today is not interested in creating jobs. The government of the day lack the real will to create jobs in South Africa. The president, in each of his speeches, he always say we have to create jobs. But what is the reality? They are absent. They're not interested whether people have jobs or not, because they are not here. And everybody knows that employment depends on the economic growth of South Africa. In 2010, the economic growth of the GDP was 3%. The unemployment rate, 23%. Last year, the economic growth rate was a mere 0.8%. And the unemployment rate at the moment, 29%. But let us not mislead each other, Chairperson. We're talking about an unemployment rate of 29%. But the real unemployed people in South Africa, we are talking about 40%. Amongst the youth, we talk about 55% unemployment. And we know the only way that we can really create jobs in South Africa is if the economy grows. Maar wat is die probleem? Die probleem is dat die ANC-regering is meer ingestel op sy ideologiese beleidsstandpunte en daarom wil ek vir die agbare minister sê, agbare minister, u gaan net nou hier kom praat, maar u hande is afgekap, u kan nie werk skep nie, want u is maar net 'n minister in die kabinet. So actually you're useless to come and say what you're going to do because you have to get the approval of your government. Maar die ANC-regering wil net eenvoudig hulle sosialistiese, communistische ideologieë afdwing op Suid-Afrika. Die Vryheidsfront Plus sê, daar is net een manier. Begin om die vrye markbeginsels in Suid-Afrika te begin toepas. Ons het al hoeveel keer vir u gesê, doen weg met swart ekonomiese bemagtiging. Ek is baie bly om te hoor die DA begin nou daarom ook dieselfde geleide maak as die Vryheidsfront Plus, as dit kom by swart ekonomiese bemagtiging. Want hoeveel keer het ons al hier gepraat oor swart ekonomiese bemagtiging wat u dit verdedig het? Moenie skyn heilig wees nie. Verder sê die Vryheidsfront Plus, skaf regstellende aksie af. U wil 'n toekoms skep vir jong mense daar. Maar omdat hulle gesiggies wit is, sê u vir hulle mag nie sekere werk kry nie. Dit is onbillik. U sal nie vorder om werkloosheid af te skaf as u so aangaan nie. Ek dank.
Nou dankie. Honorable Miller.
House Chair, I think the honourable member from the Vryheidsfront got the province wrong where Blomhof comes from, but welcome anyway. House Chair, there can be no doubt that South Africa has a jobs crisis. Roughly 10 million South Africans are unemployed. At the same time, we have an economy that is barely marking time, and our government is not helping. In 1970, mining contributed 21.3% to our country's gross domestic product. It now stands at less than 8%. Jobs in the sector have dropped from 528,000 employees in 2008 to just 381,000 today, according to the quarterly labour force survey published by Stats SA. That's a drop of some 28% over a period of 10 years. And the question we need to ask ourselves is why? As one of the world's richest nations when it comes to mineral resources, why is our mining sector in general decline? Why is our mining sector producing less than other nations? Why is mining, which should be a driving force in our economy, unable to deliver economic growth and employment? And the answer is that the Department of Mineral Resources is stuck in the past, and that the ANC has no real desire to grow the sector and create more employment. The department does nothing to encourage investment in prospecting, exploration, or actual mining. In fact, its actions have actively driven investors away. It has a defunct mineral rights administration mired by corruption. It has created a policy mess by tinkering with the mining charter, which leaves investors questioning whether they should actually invest. And it has essentially allowed unions to call the shots when it comes to mining because it is toothless and visionless. The only reason mining companies remain here, despite the challenges, is our vast mineral wealth. But even so, many feel that other African countries, Botswana, Ghana, Mali, to name but a few, are much more attractive. And so we are seeing disinvestment in South Africa. Just this week, Neil Froneman, the CEO of Sibanye-Stillwater, the world's largest platinum miner, said that there is little incentive to put more money in the country and that they were seeking to reduce their exposure to our economy. Now, mining remains a sector that can rapidly grow its workforce, but the government must take bold and decisive steps. We must scrap the mining charter, streamline mineral rights administration, make it easier for mines to produce their own electricity or purchase directly from independent power producers. We must clean up corruption in the department, and we need to rein in the unions. If we really want jobs, if we want our economy to grow, we need to encourage investment in the mining sector. We can either create more jobs or jealously protect the ones we have. But if we want South Africa to succeed, we need to get our people working. And that means growing the mining sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Sebui se se latelang ke Ntate Moruti Mishwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ACDP is extremely concerned about the impact that high levels of crime and lawlessness are having on the economy. This in addition to the personal trauma that victims of crime have to endure. We further strongly condemn attacks on foreign nationals that are abiding by the laws of the country. We have seen widespread burning of buses, businesses, trucks, and shops. This has correctly been described as an economic sabotage. We also see the negative impact that cable theft has had on our rail network, impacting commuters and rail freight. Poor economic growth and economic sabotage have contributed directly to the unacceptably high unemployment levels in the country. The deterrent to crime is the sure knowledge that the perpetrator will be arrested, successfully prosecuted, and sentenced to a lengthy period of imprisonment. Yet we see very few criminals being arrested for economic sabotage. Petrol bombing trucks, looting shops, stealing copper cabling is happening almost on a daily basis. In addition, the risk of being mugged, stabbed, raped, or murdered also discourages business investors from investing in South Africa, as well as discouraging foreigners from visiting the country. The ACDP calls on the President and his team to work much harder to restore law and order in the country and to remove policy uncertainty that is one of the major obstacles to much needed investments. Government must ensure that South Africa becomes a friendly and attractive investment destination and create a climate conducive for job creation to the benefit of the unemployment in our country. And lastly, House Chair, I want to ask for forgiveness from God on behalf of the nation for the way South African citizens have behaved by attacking innocent foreign nationals. And secondly, I want to ask those who have been injured in the process to forgive South Africans because government has promised to do something about the attacks that have been taking place. They have promised to attack and to arrest all the perpetrators. And thirdly, I want to appeal to nations from which these victims have come from. We have heard some rumors that some are saying they are going to retaliate. And I want to say to them, please, because government has promised to deal with the perpetrators, let us be given a chance, let South Africa be given a chance so that together we can build the economy of the continent. And lastly, I want to appeal to my fellow church leaders and religious leaders in the country. All of us should be ambassadors of peace and ministers of reconciliation. And to all South Africans, may I remind you that many of those who are in the struggle, those who went abroad looking for refuge, they were looked after well. None of them were attacked. None of them were victimized. So let us reciprocate and treat foreigners among us with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Nkwangu. Isikhathi ngesakho. Xesha ngelakho.
Siyabulela, thank you very much. Comrades, let me take you down on a history lane, memory lane. 1995, this government embarked on a massive trade liberalization program. That was done by Minister Trevor Manuel when he was still the Minister of Trade and Industry. He did so enthusiastically because probably he wanted to impress WTO at the time. That is when the deindustrialization of the South African economy began. Fast forward to 2000s, for example, when we're experiencing a commodity boom. Remember when Minister Manuel used to come here with plums and all the nice things, distributing them here. That was the deindustrialization of the South African economy happening there. How did it happen? Remember, commodity prices increased, which resulted to the appreciation of the South African rand. One, that caused the manufacturing sector to be less competitive. That's a speech. The other issue here, which is important, is that while then the price of the rand appreciated at the time, there were no protections provided to the manufacturing sector of the South African economy. How did you expect that sector to be competitive in the first place? Even the apartheid government got the formula better than you are doing. The manufacturing sector contributed 20% of GDP in 1994, and now it's about 12% of GDP. Now, how can we create jobs? Turn the situation around, provide a bit of protection, embark on an import substitution industrialization strategy, right? That's inward industrialization. It's a no-brainer. If there has been an deindustrialization over time, the steps that you should be taking is to reindustrialize the South African economy, making the important interventions that you need to make to help them to, for example, some of the sectors. What you'd help them is with backwards and forwards integration in those industries, but you need to understand the strategic sectors in which you want to do this. It's simple economics. Otherwise, if I need London, employment creation and nice English. I want to give you another example. During in the 1920s, 1930s, right? What happened is that unemployment in the UK was 15% and the US was 25%, and that was considered to be a crisis. In South Africa, we have an expanded definition of 40% unemployment rate, and it's business as usual. No decisive policy interventions are being made in the country. The issue is, Nini needs to understand what in doing for now. Even in these industrial development zones, the problem is that we're providing more support to foreign companies than actually doing that for South Africans. I was asked recently, I was in Germany, they said South Africans ululate when Mercedes-Benz and what BMW produce a lot of cars, and it's not even South African products. Other countries intervene. South Korea, I want to give you an example. They used to import trains from Switzerland. A couple of years later, they were exporting trains to Switzerland. That's what we should be doing.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa. Mhlonishwa Zungula.
Thank you, Speaker. Firstly, I want to condemn the violence on foreign nationals as well as gender-based violence. Up until we introduce legislation which deal with these issues, they are likely to persist even further. In the country, there is a great reliance on formal employment. This contrasts with many parts of the world where there's a strong focus on artisans and the merchant economy. South Africa is not different from other African states. Thus, we need to look at the successes of those African countries. In Ghana, the unemployment is 6.7%, Tanzania 9.7%, and in the DRC, it is 11%. And all of these countries have got a legislation that prohibits foreign nationals to participate in the informal sector. Citizens of those countries are given priority and are protected in that space. There is a clear policy that protects the microeconomy for the benefit of the locals, of the local people. In our country, we have a small town which is Carolina in Mpumalanga, where there's more than 80% of the businesses that are owned by non-South Africans. And those businesses do not employ South Africans. It is the same thing even in Tsofimvaba, Lipalale, and many small towns. This employment creates dependence on the employer, whereas business ownership creates mass economic participation of locals in the economy. We, as this Parliament, must introduce legislation that allows only South Africans to trade in the township, rural, and inner city economy. It is unacceptable that a South African cannot trade in the informal sector of a country, but citizens of those countries can come to South Africa and dominate the informal sector. It is unfair that South Africans have to compete with Chinese who are funded by their own governments in order to open businesses in South Africa. To deal with this unemployment crisis, let us secure our economy. And South Africans must come first in our economy. Foreign nationals must get jobs on a scarce and critical skills basis. It is unacceptable. If you go to Kusile, you find that there are artisans there who are coming from Germany and many of these European countries, whereas we've got South Africans without jobs. We are the parliament of the people of South Africa. Our role it is to put the interests of the South Africans first. Thank you.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa. Mhlonishwa August. Xesha ngelakho tata.
Honorable Speaker, unemployment does not impose crippling financial constraints on individuals and families. It also shreds people's dignity and self-esteem. It leads to anger and feelings of hopelessness, powerlessness, and desperation. People with and without jobs have similar hopes. We all want what is best for our families. We all want our children to live their dreams, to succeed in areas of life that we did not, and to contribute to a better country we know we can be. If more people have jobs, the lower the crime rate and the higher rate of unemployment, on the other hand, is a critical factor fueling xenophobic and gender violence, gangsterism, and the breakdown of family and community values. When our children are unable to attend school because of crime and the lack of sanitary towels, they are unable to be educated and skilled to be employed, and therefore are unemployable. It is the role of government to create conditions favorable for economic growth, investment, and new businesses, and specifically companies to invest directly or indirectly in poorer communities that will create new jobs and build momentum to fix South Africa. Young South Africans are the biggest victims of slow economic growth and the unchanged structure of the economy. The figures are shocking. We have statistics indicating that 55% of the youth between 15 and 24 are unemployed, and 31% of graduates in the same age bracket. Honorable Speaker, the alarm bells are ringing louder than ever before. Corruption, maladministration, business unfriendly practices, red tape, and unqualified civil servants have created in lethal cocktail desperation. The hopes of young people for better lives and dignity diminishes day by day. There are a number of good responses to the crisis. As public representatives, we need to act swiftly. Besides creating an appropriate environment for investment and new jobs, we should urgently examine our education system to ensure we are producing people with skills in the market that the market needs. A good government would place more emphasis on investing in smart and fast internet infrastructure, on lowering data costs, and on developing an industrial growth plan focusing on the sectors which could absorb people who are currently unemployed. The Good Party stands on 4 legs: economic, social, environmental, and spatial justice. There can be no justice without jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable August. Honorable Sheikh Imam, take the podium.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Allow me to welcome our learners in the gallery and other guests. I think one thing we must admit, that we are facing a crisis in South Africa presently. Now, time and time again in this House, we drew this attention of this House to the high unemployment rate in the country and the ticking time bomb that we believe it is. The President has asked us in his State of the Nation address to dream, and he's asked us to dream for 10 years. But in this country today, dreaming for one day is one day too many. So I'm not understanding when the President says that he's going to create 2 million jobs, there's 5 million people going to be entering the job market in that 10 years, in addition to the 10 million people already in the unemployment list. So we're talking about 15 million people. You're going to be creating 2 million jobs. Clearly, it's a time bomb waiting to explode. Now, the question is, what is the root causes of this? And there's many of them. First of all, I think all the relevant departments in this House work in silos. They don't work together. The left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. That's the first thing. If you take the issue of manufacturing, we have repeatedly brought to the attention of this House the imports that come into the country, the challenges with the textile industry, the leather industry, the plastic industry, but very little or nothing is happening. In fact, government today is not even able to speak to its own alliance partners so that we can address the labor challenges that we have in the country. You're not even able to do that at the moment. And that is what's creating chaos in the country at the moment. Now, what you saw today on the streets of today is exactly what you're going to see in a very short while, unless we address the state of this economy and the crisis that we are facing today in this country. Now, we spoke about creating jobs in the infrastructure where we've been underspending, where we've highlighted there are goods that you use that are imported from China, India, and America. Instead of creating an industry for local consumption, which is used every day plus export, we want to continue importing those goods. So we're not interested. We spoke about the Human Settlement Development Bank, provide the land, give the bond or give the loan, let them build their own houses, which will turn the economy. We're not willing to do anything about it. We spoke about dealing with the issue of fake goods coming into the country and reducing the imports, not putting in surcharges. Nothing is happening in terms of that. We are speaking about the energy crisis. We are speaking about giving and giving and giving, but not dealing with how we're going to actually solve the problem and turn it around. It's continuing, so there's no chance. We spoke in the SADC region of infrastructure development. Nothing is happening. We speak about the pharmaceutical industry, where there's a massive scope in the region. We're doing nothing about it.
Thank you very much,
So how are we going to create the job?
Imam.
It's a time bomb waiting to
Thank you.
explode.
Okay. Utata unonsele. Rakela phambili nenkulumo phikiswana.
House Chair, Honorable Ministers present, Honorable Members. Our debate today is about the characterization of the apartheid economy, which correctly has been characterized as being structural because it was founded on the foundation of exclusion. Hence, today we're sitting with the mammoth task of a growing unemployment. Our economy as well is not immune from the influences that shape the global economy and is subjected to the era of the fourth industrial revolution that brings about more emphasis on technological advances. As ANC, in the strategy and tactics document, we have said that leadership to economic development should be characterized by pro-poor growth and poverty reduction. We further say that construction of a new society depends centrally on the leadership role of the state. I'm sure that clarifies our position with regard to the neoliberal approach that DA chooses. President Ramaphosa outlined the 7 key priorities with the economic transformation and job creation as priority number 1. In doing so, President Ramaphosa has reaffirmed the ANC position of making economic transformation and job creation the apex program of the 6th administration. Youth unemployment rate is excessively high and is the priority that we should be focusing on. Stats SA Q2 Labour Survey report highlights that an increase in the ages of 15 to 24, the unemployment rate stands at 56.4%, and yet on the ages of 24 to 35, it stands at 35.6%. It's also important to note that race and gender remains a factor in the unemployment landscape, with blacks in far more vulnerable position than their white counterparts. Black African women are the most vulnerable, with the unemployment rate at 35% as at Q2. The high youth unemployment rate as well needs to be noted. That is also regardless of education level, and as well as the another contributing factor, which is the qualification and the skills mismatch that characterizes our job market. Our government, through its manifesto, has committed to create more jobs and decent jobs in line with the NDP targets and as well as the additional 2 million jobs outlined in the State of the Nation address. The conclusion of the NEDLAC engagement processes and implementation of the outcomes of the Presidential Jobs Summit must help to protect the existing jobs and as well as to create new ones that are decent. Government has further committed to forge public-private partnerships in order to bridge the gap between the required skills in the labor market and further implement apprenticeship opportunities for young men and women. Stats South Africa reports that discouraged workers have declined tremendously on Q2. This has pushed unemployment significantly high. There is an undeniable relationship between the upswing and the message of hope that was spelled by President Ramaphosa in the State of the Nation address, specifically on the issue of job creation, which has found resonance with our ordinary mass of the people in all the rural areas, starting from Sekhukhune to Eastern Cape, including nalapha eKapa. Abantu bakamele bayamkela ukuthi imisebenzi mayivele bakholelwa kwi-New Dawn. A further 21,000 jobs have been created in Q2. Now the employment rate in South Africa stands at 16.3 million, an indication of a positive movement forward. In addition to that, we have observed that for South Africa to be competitive and to be able to improve on the local economy and attract investment, the country needs to address the cost of doing business and deal with impeding regulatory elements. We will also take courage from the practical interventions aimed at turning around job-creating sectors such as the renewable energy, mining, manufacturing, creative industries, tourism, and oceans economy. This, in doing so, will be able to, in fact, to realize our commitments we have made in the 54th conference, that is of forging a unity of purpose between government, labor, business communities, and civil society through the social dialogue platform of NEDLAC. The assumption, in conclusion, the assumption of the DA and the distortions that have been presented here need to be corrected, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair. The first thing is around the growth of the economy in the Western Cape. You would recall, Honorable Maimane, that when the ANC was in government in the Western Cape, the economy grew by 5.5%. And currently it stands at 1.9%.
Siyabonga mhlonisha. Siyabonga mhlonisha Nansele. Ixesha liphelile ngiphile. Babu Galo, siyakumukela.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. In one of her sterling contributions to humankind, the academic and political activist Helen Keller is quoted as having said the following, open quote, "Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence," close quote. In the history of this Parliament, we have minimally encountered debates such as this one, which has not only elicited national interest, but has gone far to implicate our commitment to human rights and substantive equality. I urge this House to look into the life of Helen Keller, who was the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. As our economy is gradually receiving or recovering, with Stats SA pronouncing that our gross domestic product increased by 3.1% in the second quarter of 2019, we need to reincarnate Helen Keller's rigor. We note, however, that a 3.1% growth has no bearing on the high levels of unemployment, which currently sits at 29%. Many South Africans continue to languish in abject poverty and despair. Chair, the economic transformation, inclusive growth and competitiveness policy discussion from the National Treasury offers some hope. It is uniquely drafted and it proposes no quick fix like the much punted phrases such as quantitative easing, asset prescription, and the expropriation of the Reserve Bank. The discussion document cites red tape more than 28 times. It proposes that we must revisit red tape impact assessment bill. This is for obvious reason, as it generally accepted that the small and medium enterprises create more jobs than any other role player in the economy. We therefore need to create an enabling environment for small businesses' sustainability through set-aside preferential procurement and funding. We are eagerly waiting for the Job Summit's report. One of the challenges identified during the discussion at the summit was the issue of job experience. The aspect of entry-level job requirements such as experience is not assisting our young people. Thank you very much.
Siyabulela Mhlonishwa. Mhlomphegi Modise, tswela pele le ditaba.
Dear South Africans, it is an open secret that we are in a terrible crisis. We need a state of emergency to address this crisis. When I stood up before this parliament in the past years, and I must emphasize a number of years, to point out that unemployment rate was above 40%. Government rejected my assertion using their usual unempirical evidence that jobs creation was improving daily. History has proven that one was and still is correct. Crime and killings that happen every minute in our country are as a sequel to hunger, unemployment itself, etc. The killings of people who are from beyond our borders are as a result of this whole thing, this failure by this government. Though I agree with the 9 policy mandates of the Department of Labor, they, however, don't address the creation of jobs, but only address administration, inspection, and enforcement of proper labor relations where jobs already exist. But even in that realm of enforcement and administration, proper work is not done, as poor workers are paid in or with tips in restaurants and other industries. I stress that we need a state of emergency to address this problem. I can never forget what President Mandela did in 1998. I'm happy that you, Minister, you were there as one of the leaders in the trade union movement when President Mandela called us to say, you workers, labor, government, let's come up with a very clear program. And indeed, we did do that. But today what we see is a situation where the president and government will exclude other people, including and in particular other political parties, and take only, for example, the chairperson of the portfolio committee, and all the other people are excluded. And I want to say, we shall never go anywhere, we shall never emerge with anything to take our people forward, to address the serious problems that we are faced with. We need a state of emergency. And I want to believe or hope that you will rise and say, yes, let us make sure that together we are able to go forward to help the people of our country. Thank you.
Ralebo. Honorable Nyanso, I didn't see you. Continue, Baba.
Chairperson, let me start by condemning the brutal killing of women and children that we have been witnessing recently and the cropping of criminal elements disguised as xenophobic acts. What type of xenophobia that is this that only affects our African brothers and sisters and their business interests and not big international corporates and the real foreigners? No African can be a foreigner in Africa. PAC was right and is still right today that Pan-Africanist ideology is the only answer to the so-called xenophobia. We call for the state to tighten the grip in dealing with barbaric criminal elements, whether it's our African brothers selling drugs or locals taking the law in their hands, or it is the international drug lords and syndicates. As the PAC, we are of the firm view that the landlessness and unemployment are a consequence of our economic policy direction, and it lacks any form of ideological foundation, nor does it show any level of decisiveness from this government to turn around and transform the economy to favor the majority of our people. PAC is clear that if and when we can resolve the land question and get the riches we are supposed to derive from our mineral resources for self-development as a people, will be able to completely eradicate unemployment and many of the problems that our people are faced with on a daily basis. The PAC condemns the continuous exploitation of our God-given riches by foreign enterprises conniving with the elite and political bosses. The trillions made from our mines, trillions made on our farms, seasides, wildlife, etc. must be used to capacitate the economy so it can respond to the social ills that our people find themselves in, and most importantly, develop ourselves and invest for the future generations. The PAC calls on all political parties, including those who simply shout land slogans for political expediency, to take a pause and relook at the issue of land ownership, with a specific reference to the control of riches derived from our land. With land ownership, unemployment becomes a non-issue. Thank you.
Honorable Mbele, it's your time.
The unemployment crisis in our country is undoubtedly our biggest challenge, and it requires all social actors to do their part to contribute to its reduction. This crisis of joblessness erodes the human dignity of millions. It widens inequality, and it keeps opportunities and substantive freedom out of reach for the most vulnerable. It means that the flame of hope and ambition for many young people is quickly snuffed out when they join the ranks of the jobless, either as they leave school or, if they are fortunate to pursue higher education, when they finish further learning or training. I myself remember during my last year of tertiary study being painfully aware of the problem of graduate unemployment at Wits University and gripped with constant anxiety about whether or not I would be able to find a job or internship the following year in order to start a career path. This is a worry that weighs heavily on the hearts and minds of each cohort of school leavers and graduates as they join the labor market. Sadly, given the concentration of unemployment in the youth brackets, this worry becomes hopelessness, frustration, and despair for many of these school leavers and graduates as they remain stuck in joblessness with seemingly no way forward or a way out. That is the reality of unemployment faced by young people. Namhlanje, not in this imaginary bright future under the ANC that the Honorable Nkabane was fantasizing about. And let me also say to her that the hands of the ANC-led government are the very last place that our economy would be safe in or should be in? Are these not the same hands that have mismanaged and bankrupted Eskom, SAA, SA Express, Denel, and the SABC? And are these SOEs of the ANC's developmental state that will address unemployment while they are operating at continuous losses and being debt-laden? Just now, Eskom is going to receive a 59 billion rand bailout that the ANC wants to table in this parliament. Ningazodlala ngathi la. As the DA, we are clear that the #1 item on the agenda must be job-creating growth. That means creating an enabling environment for investments and entrepreneurship. Small businesses must be the key drivers in this endeavor. And that is why, as the DA, we will fight for solutions to improve access to capital, markets, supply chains, in order to expand freedom, fairness, and opportunity
your time is up.
for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Junjwa.
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili. Abaphathiswa abakhoyo apha namhlanje namasekela abo. Amalungu eParliament abekekileyo nendwendwe zethu. Ukuba ngaba bekukho ixesha uba bekuvumeleka ingxoxo mpikiswano leya namhlanje ibingafuni ukulawulwa ngexesha. Ngoba ifuna into ukuba sithethe izinto ngobunjalo bazo. Ngoba ifuna sivele sitsho elubala ukuba sivelaphi, siyaphi, sifuna ntoni. Honorable Chair, there is no denying that unemployment levels have reached a crisis point. We all have to do something about it. I guess that is the purpose of us having this debate. Honorable Chairperson, in the last century, work became not only a means of material fulfillment, but also a fundamental tool for personal development and community participation. The connection between work and society will always remain. The levels of unemployment are not only threatening material fulfillment of individual workers, but the survival of the communities. Having said that, Chair, I think it is important that we do say that njengoba kuthi ANC ayenzanga nto nje kuko lento bokuthiwa yi-job summit ibibiziwe ngumongameli welizwe. The African National Congress had clear plans to tackle unemployment. Without investment and industrialization, we will not win the battle. I'm happy that on both fronts we are making progress. It is therefore pleasing to know that international investors like Ford Motor Company are showing confidence in our country. Ford Motor Company, South African in Silverton, is to add a third shift that will add 1,220 new jobs from August. We know that the managing director of Neil Hill hit the nail on the head when he said, we know that as a company, we have a strong role to play, not in providing quality cars, vehicles, service to our customers, but also about contributing back to the economy and creating jobs and economic opportunities. It is this kind of corporate citizenry that we expect for all our companies to display. This, of course, is a result of the work that government is putting in its effort to implement the industrial policy and thereby putting company on the right economic trajectory. Ndifuna ukuthi phambi uba ndimkelele ixesha. Ndifuna ukuthi phambi uba ndimkelele ixesha. I-NHI akho ndawo iya kuyo. I-NHI is here to stay. Because bengayifuni nje NHI is because they have never bona bayayazi that they have been treated according to their color in terms of medicine, in terms of equipment, in terms of clothes. That they know. They know that they are attending private hospitals. I-privatization asisoze siyivume because siyayazi i-privatization ntoba izabasaphi nabantu bakuthi. Therefore ukubhaila out i-Eskom yeyonto ibalulekileyo because xa bengafuni bi-Eskom mayibhaile out bafuna into bayelilizwe makube mnyama emini kuzaba mnyama emini Mr. Maimane njengoba ungafuni nje into yoba i-African National Congress mayikhokhele. Okwesibini, Mr. Madisha, awunawumapha mhlobam uthi urhulumente akafuna uthetha nabantu. Umongameli uthe eme kule ndawo kulonyaka. There will be what is called a social compact. Urhulumente, abasebenzi, abantu, wonke umuntu uthe le nto uzothetha into engekhoyo because uyayazi into yoba le nto ithethayo apha ayikho. SMMEs wayeme apha umongameli welizwe uDeputy President esithi i-UIF iza kuncedisa ukuba kwakhiwe izakhono kwakhiwe in plumbing and other sectors izakhono zokuba kubekho i-cooperative kuncediswe i-SMMEs. Niyabuza apha eKapa iqondo lemisebenzi lehlile apha eKapa kweziphi sectors. Ndicela ukunixelela agriculture there it has gone down by 19%. Cela unimamele Honorable Maimane. Mining has gone down where you govern, where you say everything is right, but accept that unemployment is not about the Western Cape only. Unemployment affects all, and as the African National Congress will be interested in ensuring that that is addressed. It can never be for yabona ke kuthiwa ngesixhosa ubunzima bomthwalo bugqala ugxekwana. Here in the Western Cape, in terms of a sector, transport sector has gone down unemployment. We are standing here. Unemployment.
Order, honorable members, order. Order.
Masitsho mhlali ngaphambili into yoba njengokuba sithetha ngokungabikho kwezikills apha andizawusuka yingxaki eyatshiwo, may his soul rest in peace, when Verwoerd said here, never teach a black child maths and science, because when you do that you are not empowering. So as much as we may have at some point some areas that we must correct, but it is correct, it is the truth, don't run away from it. That is why now we have to ensure that our children, we are a generation that was refused to do maths and science. We are a generation that was prevented to do, we are a generation that couldn't do law because at a particular time, Afrikaans was compulsory. Therefore, when we stand here and say there are things that we need to correct, we must accept and acknowledge that we are part of that problem. And therefore, siyacela bantu boMzantsi Afrika into kokuba lento imbi yahlekayo apha sicela ubusiness nerhulumente nabasebenzi beze badibane akumandanga. Africa must unite, but in uniting Africa it does not mean that makuvunyelwe into yoba abantu abangene ngendlela engeyiyo mabahlale apha benze izinto banikwe imisebenzi at the expense of abantwana abamnyama abancinci. Njengoba umongameli betshilo wathi kufuneka sifocuse ebantwaneni abancinci, the youth. Iyabaluleka ke into kokuba sibacela abantu bakuthi into yoba if you disunite Africa, you must know that you are messing up a black and an African person, because mess up Africa, you are not only messing up the continent,
Thank
you
you.
are messing up the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Siyabonga, siyabonga bahlonishwa. Siyabonga. Siyabonga bahlonishwa, asihlaleni phansi siqhubeke. Mhlonishwa Ngqongqoshe. Isikhathi ngesakho ukuvala lenkulumo mpikiswano.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson,
Order, members.
the honorable members, the honorable guests, and members of the public and members of the media. As men, we must unite and join hands with all the campaigns against the scourge of violence against women. Some of us might be seated here with a lot of political rhetoric, but back home, we are perpetuating the very same violence against our own people at home. We must do also self-reflection. Lento, aina no taxi, aina driver. Simona manyala enziwa ngabantu egameni lenkonzo bathi bangebefundisi. Sisigulo, aina politician. Sisigulo samadoda. Kufuneka ke sisijonge sisigulo. Sithethe ngaso, sisalaphi. As government, we've been very consistent in our fight against unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We continue to resist and refuse any attempts to defocus us. We are steadfast and resolute in fighting unemployment, inequality, and the eradication of poverty in our lifetime. As members of this House, we were all taken aback by the latest unemployment statistics, 29%, and which was also saying in terms of the extended definition, it's 38.5%. Indeed, it's a crisis that we acknowledge, that we welcome. That's why we welcome this debate. We are of the view that this challenge requires a proper constructive response which transcends party politics. I therefore trust this debate is supposed to be taken in that spirit, but I'm not hearing that spirit from some who come to this platform. The following are the measures taken to demonstrate our commitment as government, ANC-led government. The presidency and the DTI are working towards the implementation of the revised industrial strategy to increase the participation of sectors that have realistic potential to achieve large-scale impact on employment and exports. We are working towards expanding investment in economic infrastructure at both national and local level, particularly on electricity, ports, railroads, to create an enabling environment for inclusive growth. We are working towards the development of a more effective system or more effective systems to promote sustainable local procurement of the capital goods, consumables and services in order to support the local industrial capacity. Spending by government on goods and services is growing consistently, with a large portion of spending directed at the SMMEs, with payments made within 30 days where there are no disputes. This includes scaling up the programs that support the SMMEs in the townships and in the rural economies. We are ensuring the implementation of the Presidential Job Summit Framework Agreement as part of the President's commitment towards the full implementation of the framework. The President is now convening to deal with this issue of implementation.
convening monthly meetings to ensure the fast tracking of the commitments. Remember that the Job Summit put in place a tracking system to ensure the implementation of the 77 commitments made by government and social partners. The majority are being implemented, Honorable Matisha. As government, we are moving urgently to restructure the SOEs to improve their financial and operational sustainability. In particular, our work on ESCOM is a priority. Whilst the policy directive for allocation of high-demand spectrum has been done, the auctioning of the broadband spectrum must be completed urgently. And I need also to mention the presidential youth intervention. The plan sets out 5 priorities and targets that will establish the National Pathway Management Network, promote a workforce solution for growing jobs, develop technology-enabled youth self-employment and township enterprises, build on the workplace-based experience and promote the opportunity for youth to do service. Over the next 10 years, this plan sets ambitious targets. 5 million young work seekers between the ages of 15 and 35 will have been engaged in a national pathway management network and access services to help them grow their employability and identify and pursue the work opportunities. 3 million new temporarily paid work opportunities will have been created through the Youth Employment Services, the YES, work-related integrated learning opportunities and new youth services opportunities. 2 million young people will be engaged in sustainable work opportunities through the Agile Workforce Development Programs. The establishment of the Project Management Office in Presidency, which will coordinate and drive the intervention and manage delivery and performance, will support this plan. Moreover, a war room will be created or will be established drawing in leading experts from across the departments and social partners and across the public and the private sectors. The YES initiative is led and driven by the private sector in collaboration with the government and labor. There have been 564 company registrations through the YES digital portal in the past 9 months. Of these, 384 companies have progressed to paying registration fees and have jointly committed to 21,100 youth work experiences. Salaries for these YES programs or YES employment opportunities will put well over R1 billion into the local economies in a year. And I call all companies, big and small, which have not yet committed a number of jobs for young people to do so, because tackling youth unemployment requires all of us to play a role. All this takes place against the backdrop of the stimulus package and the investment summit initiatives, which are ongoing. I think I need to make 2 points here. Sluggish growth in an uncertain global economy will not be turned around overnight. Similarly, state capture and corruption was a protracted process. Ending corruption and state capture is a process, not an event. The steady rebuilding of the state institution bodes well, but make no mistake, the defeat of this scourge is a necessary precondition for real growth and job creation to take place. From the side of the Department of Employment and Labor, our direct contribution to combating the unemployment includes the following. Firstly, the high social impact portfolio. Here, our focus on job preservation and creation. To this end, 1.2 billion was invested in EdCon, acquiring a stake of 19% and in the process saving about 140,000 direct and indirect jobs. Secondly, absorption of 1 million young, not in employment, not in education, not in training, the need. The compensation fund is providing bursaries for 5,000 students studying through the various higher education institutions as investment managers, actuarial scientists, medical practitioners, as well as 2,500 social workers that will be placed to facilitate the compensation fund rehabilitation programs. The Unemployment Insurance Fund again provides 1,000 small enterprise incubation for the operatives that are in the agro-processing sector, hospitality, beauty therapy, and construction. The Department of Employment and Labor in Q1 of this current financial year placed 24,000 young people in jobs across the 9 provinces. 21,164 of these jobs are contracted, 835 permanent, 2,331 temporal, and 592 casual jobs. The department again has swiftly implemented the Job Summit resolution on reviewing the training layoff scheme process to ensure speedy intervention for companies in distress. Working with the Productivity SA, 860 companies will be assisted to save up to 43,000 jobs by March 2024. We will also create 340 future forums to train 1,110 members of the improved solutions and further 12,460 SMEs to improve their productivity and business efficiencies. And thirdly, the labor activation program. There's a serious labor activation program which we are dealing with through the Unemployment Insurance Fund again, partnered with more than 30 state-owned training providers and institutions to implement training of the UIF beneficiaries. The intention is to pilot the project with training over 160,000 learners over a period of 3 years. The training will vary from skills programs to learnership and artisan training. Through the intervention, 6,000 artisans will be trained together with 67,000 learnerships in construction, financial services, hospitality, and engineering. As at Q1, 20,000 people are training, with over 75% being young people and more than 50% being women. Note that the skills training intervention is aligned to the skills development needs of the labor market in terms of the future of work and the 4th industrial revolution. Madam Speaker, I'm about to conclude. I do want to put it categorically. There is nowhere in the world where Honorable Maimane, the elitist free market system, has provided full employment. So anybody or organizations who thinks that it will do so in the country that have chronic, stubborn, and systematic unemployment crisis like ours should get his head examined. Let us get it this clear. The market cycles have absolutely no inherent ability to correct themselves. Not now, not over time, not any time. It is totally incorrect that the balance between the demand and supply of labor would be a natural state in an economy that has unfettered or self-regulated markets, free of regulations by the state. And Speaker, another stage now, not now, we may have to delve deeper into the whole question of the work. What is the work? What gets counted as work? Maybe using what indicators? As I end, I want to appeal to all South Africans. It is not violence that will increase the limited resources that we're fighting over. It actually does the opposite. Violence takes away little resources that we have. So by engaging in violence, we are actually defeating the same objectives we want to achieve. Let us love ourselves, love our neighbors, love our continent and all her people. Love our women, love our children. We know they are the heart of our nation. Let's embrace brotherhood and sisterhood, and perhaps graduate from just being the South Africans, become proud Africans and wise internationalists. Let us put the blame where it belongs. which has caused the resentment. Exploitation of the desperate foreign workers who are paid less than the stipulated minimum wage, the non-registration of employees with the UIF, failure to declare workers on a monthly basis to the UIF, failure to pay overtime, Sunday work, public holiday rates, and implementation of the incentive. Still paying workers like slaves by hand, cash, no pay slip, no what, is perpetuated by some in your constituency, Honorable Maimane, who are exploiting the cheap labor of the desperate African workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you. Siyabonga. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the participants in the debate. That concludes the debate. Honorable members, order. We now move to motions without notice. Any member of the ANC? The ANC motion.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I rise to raise the motion without notice that the House notes with shock and sadness the destruction of the Central Florida by a vicious devastation storm, Hurricane Dorian, killing 20 people, with scores more still missing on the 3rd of September 2019, and acknowledges that the immense physical destruction happens in the Caribbean nation, north or in Abaco Island and Grand Bahama, where the deadly storm left behind a paradise obliterated. Recalls that street were flooded due to high water volume and vehicle on standstill as pounding rain poured and tropical storm force wind blowing. Further recalls that the residents put together an ad hoc rescue group with boats and personal watercraft as their homes were mashed into rubble. Realizes that more than 60,000 people, Honorable Chair, on the island will need food and clean water, according to the report from the authorities. Further understand that...
Please move, your time is expired.
I so move, Chair.
Thank you.
Hey, Nene.
As a reminder, honorable members, order. Order. As a reminder, all members that will be doing motions without notice, you have only 1.5 minutes to do it. So by that time, you must be able to move your motion. Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objection, agreed to. We move to the DA.
Somlomo, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House knows the tragic and sudden passing of Mr. Ricardo Saralina on 1st September 2019 after suffering a massive stroke. Further